Speaking of horses, I'm Wayne Williams. We're here at the NorthWest Horse Fair in Albany, Oregon. And one of our affiliate TV members from Speaking of Horses is my guest this morning. That's Heidi McLaughlin. And how are you this morning?
How are you?
Good. We had an interesting day yesterday. We filmed one of Heidi's clinics yesterday for future use. And that clinic went very well. We did one in Pomona a few weeks ago that the horse just wasn't cooperating.
That was funny. It was supposed to be a clinic on how to help people get over their fear of their horse spooking. And this gal brought a real nice, very sweet and gentle draft cross mare. Older, all furry, and I couldn't get the horse to spook. So but I could teach her how to handle herself and handle the horse when it's...
It's an entertaining clinic to watch, and I'm sure at some point we'll have it posted, but it just wasn't working out. Well, the one yesterday worked out pretty well.
Right, so we tried it again yesterday, and another perfect candidate. She volunteered and brought her horse, and the horse was actually a very, very good horse. Responds to her well. She can ride well, she can canter, but she's deathly afraid if that horse spooks. So I was able to teach her how to handle herself and what to do and handle the horse. And so people got to actually see this time. That was funny.
So you've been hitting a lot more of the expos this year. Which one? Do you have any more left this spring?
Yeah, actually I have a couple. I'll be in Iowa, the Iowa Horse Expo next week. I think it's in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
It's the weekend of April 1st, I believe.
Yeah, that's 2 weekends.
Yes. And I know Chris Cox is going to be there. I think the people of Iowa are in for a treat because he's never gone to that expo before.
That'll be a good one.
So
yes.
that should be good. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are anxious to have the opportunity to see him. And I felt honored that they asked me to come too and be included. I'm also going to be a clinician at Sacramento. What is that? The Western States.
The Western States in June. I'll be back there with you.
Yeah.
So.
And then I have quite a few clinics that I'm flying all around to do. I do 2-day clinics to help people get over their fear, and so I'll be back here in Albany in 4 weeks to conduct a 2-day clinic. And then I have one the end of April, beginning of May in Iowa. And I have one in Redding, California in May. And so we're putting together some of those 2-day clinics.
Right.
And so I'll be busy and probably until about July.
Well, and the beauty of the expos, when you come and do these expos, the real beauty of that is that people can come over, they see what you're doing, and then you do come back and do the clinics.
Right.
And you can get your people right here that say, man, I want more time with you and with my horse.
Exactly. And I started doing that when I realized I was feeling bad because the people would come and they would get excited and say, I really need help with this. Are you ever coming back to this area? And I'd say, well, I'll try to set something up. And I realized that if I really worked hard at it and tried to find a facility and make it work out, that I was able to help them more.
Right. And you said something in the clinic yesterday that has stuck with me, and it's like, you always want your horse to help you through these bad times, and what your horse is really doing is he's looking to you to help him through the bad times.
Right.
And that's the thought process most people don't think about.
When we're stuck in fear, we're always hoping for a horse to be brave for us. And we're talking about a flight animal who runs from fear, needs to go back to the herd for safety. And so when the rider kind of panics, when the horse spooks, the rider panics, it turns into something it didn't need to turn into, and the horse basically thinks you just left him. And so he goes back to his instinct and says, I gotta save myself. And it doesn't need to go that far.
Well, and when I first started seeing you at various expos, you had just your book, Fearless Rider, and I think I went and you did a talk about the book, and I think I filmed one of your first talks way back, Equine Affairs somewhere.
I think we were in Colorado.
Maybe it was Colorado.
It was at the Rocky Mountain Horse Expo in Denver.
And you were just getting started, and you have now evolved past the book. I mean, the book is really good data if you want to get Heidi's book and don't have it. But then now you're in that arena with people, and you're really showing them basically your own experiences in being a fearless rider.
Yeah, and I have evolved. I started, the book came out, it's called Kick Your Fear of Horses, and it came out in August of 2012. I did a revision on it in 2014, and then I came out with a DVD called The 12 Steps to Fearless Riding. And then I started doing clinics, all of which is surprising to me, because when I wrote the book and I was a fearful rider, I would have never in a million years thought it would evolve to the way it is, where now I'm doing demonstrations at expos in front of an audience, and that I am going all over the country and helping people. It just evolved, and
But it's fun.
it's fun. I love what I do. I'm very passionate about it. I almost feel like it's a ministry, because I don't want people to be afraid anymore, and they don't have to be.
And see, that's the way I feel when I'm out with the TV show or whatever. This is fun, you know. And although you can go home dead tired, like I have a red-eye flight home tonight, I'll be back in Wisconsin, you know, like 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'll be driving to my house. But
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
But, see, you can be dead tired when you do that, and then you say, okay, let's see, what's coming up in a couple of days? There you are, you know.
And it really is it is a great experience. You start to you meet the nicest people on the road, and I just feel really blessed to be able to do what I love.
Well, and you do a good job with it.
Thank you.
Well, we're running out of time, but it's been nice talking to Heidi again this morning. So Heidi, thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. It's always good to see you.
Oh, I have fun, you know, and you're always a pleasure to be around. So
Thank you.
thanks to Heidi, and we're at the Northwest Horse Fair in Albany, Oregon. Stay with us. Breyer Model Horses had an exhibit here. It was Breyer Fest West, and they were a big part of the Northwest Horse Fair in Albany, Oregon. Hey, speaking of horses, Wayne Williams, we're here in Albany, Oregon. We are at the Northwest Horse Fair, and I'm glad to be standing in the Trailmeister booth with Ed Haflinger. So, Ed, welcome, and tell us exactly what it is you do.
Well, today, here at the expo, I'm assisting Robert Eversole, the Trailmeister. His project here is he gives wonderful talks to people about safety, how to get the backcountry with the horses and mules, how to camp, and just the really rudiments to get people out there and having a good time. And normally he has a website, and that website is the largest trail directory in the United States of trails, and how to get you out there. The biggest step in most people's problems getting in the backcountry or going on trail rides is their front porch. Where do I go? How do I get there? And what do I do? And my other projects are I'm a packer, horse and mule packer with the Olympic National Park. I've been with them for 18 years. I augment their trail crew, their packers, and I handle their trail crews. I pack in their camps, their equipment, their food, and it takes usually about 3-day runs in there with them. So it's quite an adventure. I keep 7 to 8 head of mules, and it's just a great project, and it helps keep the trails open for everybody. It helps to make a presence on the trails to tell folks that horses and mules really do belong here and have been here from the beginning, and the importance of hoof beats and horse turds on the trail are just amazing.
The whole thing is amazing because, yes, the horses and the mules were here first, okay? What more natural in a setting up in the mountains or anywhere on a trail than being there on horseback? I mean, that's the natural way to do it. We always said travel the world by car and you can see what man made, but you travel it by the back of a horse or a mule, you see what God made.
This is true. You know, I've had many experiences. You can only imagine how many experiences I've had in thousands of miles I've been packing in the backcountry, Olympic National Park. and for myself. But one of the foremost experiences I've had was there was one day I was coming out of a 3-day run into the area above Staircase Trailhead, and I passed a woman and her daughter. The daughter had to be in her mid-20s, and as I'm going by, I'm saying howdy and watching to make sure they're safely going by us, and I heard the daughter remark to her mom, "Mom, look at this, they're still doing this." And she was almost like she didn't want to go, and all of a sudden she's there and she's still seeing that we're doing this. Last summer I was passing a hiking group of young people. They're in their early 20s, teens, late teens, early 20s, and one of the girls was standing there so excited to take pictures of the pack springs going by. She held her camera up and just jumping up and down saying, "Look at this, look at this, look at this." And the other members of her group were taking pictures. I saw she forgot to trip the shutter. So I mean, this is we're showing people by packing in the backcountry, riding in the backcountry. We're showing people how this country was built.
Well, not only that, but now if you think about one thing, move over just a little bit. There we go. If you think about one thing, and we use mules from Revolutionary War times, Civil War times, mules and horses. Today, U.S. cavalry still has a handful of horses working in Afghanistan, because in the mountainous region over there, there's no other way to get to some of those areas. So we still have some cavalry deployed on horseback right now.
Well, I've had the opportunity to train some of the military. I trained a unit of the, if I get it right, the Civil Affairs Battalion. These are our ambassadors in camelry. They are sent into an area when there's a disaster. They're medical people, doctors and medics and veterinarians. And they came to me and asked me to train their people to be accustomed to be around horses and mules. And that's exactly what we did. And it was such an experience. One of the men came to me during the training, and we had a training at the house where we teach them the rudiments of being around an animal and how to lead them. And then the next project was overnight into the backcountry, where teams were given an animal. And so I was standing around the campfire one night listening to the guys visiting. He took me aside and said, "Ed," he said, "this is amazing." He said, "This is one of the most memorial parts of my career in the Army." He says, this compares to jumping out of an airplane, when you've taken us and taught us how to work with these animals.
Wow.
So it was said. I was standing in the rain while he told me that, and I thought, this is worth the effort.
Wow, it is. Ed, it's been a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
And you work at Olympic
National
Park
in Washington.
In Washington, state of Washington. And you're here helping Robert Eversole with Trailmeister. Check out Trailmeister as well.
Oh, please do.
And stay with us. We're here on Speaking of Horses.
Self-aggrandizing, self-publicity. So, A is for animals. That's why we ride, right? Isn't that great?
This is the Trailmeister, Mr. Robert Eversole.
You know, I love going out with my beast, and it's a great thing. So, but can we all agree that there are some things that we probably want to be able to do before we hit the trail? Is the trail a good place for training? No. Well, why not? Anything can happen. Have some M&Ms. Anything can happen. So, what are some of the things that we want to talk about or think about, prepare our animals for before we hit the trail?
Unknowns.
Unknowns? What about being able to rein? We'll go and steer. Same thing I talk to my kiddos every Wednesday.
Hey, speaking of horses, and we're right here in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. Actually, it's the rainy Pacific Northwest this morning, but we're at the NorthWest Horse Fair, and we're glad to be here. My guest is a gentleman that's been headlining here all weekend, Mr. Charles Wilhelm, and you've been doing your Ultimate Super Horse Challenge. And so how's everything been going for you here at this expo this weekend?
Well, you know, the weather's actually been phenomenal up until today. We've had some gorgeous weather, which it makes it really nice and uplifting. And we're getting a little rain today, as you know. But, you know, I was here about 6-7 years ago and you know, met some people I saw here, and it's just a good group of people.
They are. It's a wonderful group of people. Yesterday, which was Saturday, there was a really good crowd here. Had some great attendance, 60-some degrees, and the weather was gorgeous. Of course, in the Northwest, a little rain is they're used to
normal.
this up here.
Yeah,
you know, between Portland and Albany here up to Seattle, this is just where it rains.
Yes, I agree.
So it shouldn't be a big issue. But so now, how'd the Super Horse go?
Well, the Super Horse is, you know, Wayne is such a great event, and I'll tell you why it's a great event and why, you know, people work really hard to do a lot of these clinics and challenges with their horses. You know, if I could just step back a little bit, you know, about 25-30 years ago when we started doing the horse expos, back then everybody was working on their reputation and looking, be balanced, and how to communicate with the horse. But the problem, the horse didn't understand the communication skills that we're using. They didn't understand the legs, seat, and hands. And then it moved on to, and then, you know, the John Lyons and the Ray Hunts and the Lynn Palms came in, and we start talking about, you know, horsemanship, you know, and how to have a better relationship with your horse. Well, someplace along the line, it went from equitation, straight equitation, to horsemanship, and the equitation got lost along the line. You know, the horses were quieter and more respectful on the ground. They're accepting pressure, and the rider was able to be safer. But they learned the communication on the ground, but they didn't learn the communication in the saddle, which is as important.
Right.
And so this is basically what the Super Horse is all about, and being a versatile horse. You know, when I was growing up, you know, we did stock horse class, and then at night we go do gymkhana, and then we do a local parade, you know. So, and it was always done with the same horse.
Right.
They've gotten so specialized in the breed, which I'm not saying right or wrong here.
It just has happened.
It's just what happened and evolved that way. But so at the ranch, I'll get these national rank cow horses. I've had $500,000 stallions come in out of Texas, and they're great in the arena, but they go outside the arena and they fall apart. You know, and that's just that's cutters, rank cow horse, dressage, under jumpers, and so what I saw there wasn't back to me in that versatility again. You know, there's always doing the arena work or always doing the cow work, and sometimes horses just need a break and go do something else. And I find, you know, we've had several interviews over the years, and this all evolved for me. I was known on the East Coast as the blue tarp guy. You know, and they didn't know who my name was, just I did the blue tarp all the time.
Right.
And then I started working with rodeo queens in the local area. You know, they want to try out for the rodeo, but their horse couldn't carry a flag. So at the ranch, one of the criteria before the horse left, you know, that all evolved. They had to go over tarps, carry tarps, they had to go over creeks, and then they had to learn to carry flags.
Right.
And be relaxed at it. So it all kind of evolved, and then we make sure we start getting the equitation involved.
Well, the Super Horse, as I see it, and you're right, I look at like what happened within AQHA, and again, I'm not picking.
No.
But, you know, there's a point in time there a few years ago, especially when it started to become, you couldn't ride a halter horse and you couldn't halter a riding horse because they were almost diametrically opposed in the way the breeding went.
Right.
Okay. And it got really hard to have this all-around horse. Mm-hmm. And what you do with a Super Horse, and I've been fortunate enough to, at some of the expos, you know, be behind the microphone while you're doing these, and they're really fun to watch and watch the people and the effort, is that horse has to wind up doing almost everything to get through this. and to have a good enough score to really place well or win.
Well, and that's it. The events that we're doing is just, multi-event. We have a trail equitation. You could call it a working equitation. The only difference is that, we do trot transitions because that really helps balance a horse gymnastically. So we want to see that. Nice pretty transition where you don't even see it, Or like last night at A cone, they had to pick up the right lead. Well, some of them didn't pick up the right lead until 6, 8, 7 strides, where they needed to pick it up at A.
Right.
So obviously we're going to score them better because it sounds almost a little picky, but the whole idea of communication on the horse, riding the horse, is learning to be in tune and set him up so when you ask for the cues, they're there.
Yeah.
So you're actually learning to become one with the horse, which is ultimately we've been all talking about for the last couple hundred years,
Yeah.
We talk about, capturing the horse's mind, and it's easy to do on the ground. But what's neat, if you learn to communicate with that horse in the saddle, I can't tell you, Wayne, how many times strange horses that I've never been on before, school it, step off, and I'll walk away from the horse, and the owner's standing right there, and they follow me. Because it gets down to communication, it gets down to controlling the feet.
Right.
Controlling the feet is just not loping around doing nothing, but being specific in your actions.
Well, it comes down to and I watched this one time at the pre-show for the Denver Stock Show. They have a quarter horse show, big quarter horse show. And Jerry Wells, who was a very famous, quarter horse trainer, took a horse, went in the arena in the open division, blew them all away. Then the owner of the horse went in the amateur division and got the gate.
Mm-hmm.
And it just tells you who spent the time with the horse.
Sure. It's what you put in, but that's what the super horse is all about. They put the time in on the groundwork.
Right.
And we do a groundwork. One of the events that we do is, we call performance in hand. Because I think everything starts in the ground, the leadership, establishing that trust. But they put a lot of time into it, but they haven't. Listen, when you're moseying around an arena and I'll pick up the left lead here, I'll do a transition here, it's all fine and dandy. But soon as you start doing a pattern and being very specific in your request, it changes the whole ballgame.
Well, yeah, and you've got just a very short amount of time to redirect that attention. You've got to be on top of doing it. It's almost like in a reining pattern. You've got to be doing something like right now, right now, right now, right now. And the horse has got to be really intent with what you're doing.
Well, it doesn't make any difference what pattern. You could have a reining pattern, ring cow horse pattern. Like I said, you got to be. There are certain times where you ask for the leads. There's a time, place, and everything. Also, it's the same for Western dressage is big these days. Cowboy dressage is big these days.
Right.
Western Western riding is becoming huge. But it's a pattern, and some people don't. When they ride, they look down in front of the horse.
Right.
And they could, and I'm not picking on them, but they haven't learned to look ahead of the horse. So how can you do a circle if you're looking down at the horse? You have to look where you're riding, like when we're driving a car.
I have a funny story because I trail rode for years with a gentleman that, he was a good rider. Every time he went to pick up like the left lead, that big old Appaloosa stallion, he'd look down to make sure he got it, see? And then he'd lose it, okay, because he shifted all of his body weight. But every time Danny would oh shoot, he lost it. Right? Because he had it, and then he blew it.
Yeah.
Well,
some of us are one-sided, like a friend of mine, Don Moore. Well, he's a friend. I met him through the Super Horse competition. He ended up winning it on the third time he's done the Super Horse. But he had problems, picking up the right lead. But it was the way that he carried his body that pushed the weight to the outside. So everyone thought he was going to win it the first time around because he had good performance. Horse was relaxed. He wasn't hanging on the mouth.
Yeah.
It didn't have the big droopy rein, but a soft rein. But he ended up losing it because he got a 0 because you ask for the right lead and get the left lead. You can't You can't get points.
Right. But, you know, on another subject, what I like with what you're doing with the Super Horse is that as you talk about the progression through the horse expos, you know, you had the round pen reasoners in.
Yeah.
Everybody got into watching the colt start.
Yeah.
And blah, blah, blah. Then you got into more of the equitation. But what you're at now is, you know, number one, 99% of the people watching the colt starting are never going to go in a round pen to start colt.
Yep.
They're just watching how it's done. But it has progressed now to the fact that with the Super Horse, they want to say, hey, I want to come to these things. I'd kind of like to do something.
Yeah.
And this gives them a chance to work with their horse at home, come to the expo, be a part of the expo with their horse, and compete. So it's kind of another progression of where this has evolved.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point on that, because it sets goals. Everyone has to have goals. I don't care if it's in business or personal life, but with your horse too as well. It also is to encourage people. And one of the things that I found, you know, I've been doing these expos for a long time. And if I do a horse expo in Pomona and I'm doing a demonstration, I only may need one horses, but if I got enough trailers, a big enough trailer, I'm going to take 4 or 5 horses with me.
There you go.
And the reason is, and this is what's so neat about doing these at the expo, you don't get this kind of exposure in your arena at home.
Right.
Or even in a training barn.
Right.
I can't get it. Where you're in a warm-up arena and you got a 16, you know, wagon that's out in front of you or behind you, and the jingling of the clanking of the wagon and the horses clomping. You know what I mean?
Right.
You don't get that. That's a totally different thing. And so these things, these kind of exposures, really helps. You know, build confidence in the horse for other things that's going to come outside. How about the big truck that riding side of the road, and the big truck comes by and clumps along and comes up behind you,
Yep.
and your horse runs off to the field to the right.
Or like right here, yesterday I was filming some stuff in the barn arena, and the airport is right outside the back door of that barn, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden there's an older airplane with that really distinct engine
I heard
taking
that.
off, you know, and it's like, well, it's part of the game, you know.
Well, absolutely, and that's what one of the things we have to say in the Super Horse. We always tell them, expect the unexpected, because isn't that life?
Yeah.
You know,
Definitely is.
I can't tell, you know, we've been doing these horse expos, and I can tell you that I come to horse expos, and for example, I'm supposed to do a trailer load. I'm in Canada, I'm supposed to do a trailer load. Well, I don't have no horse, and I have no trailer.
Right.
Or I'm in Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, and I got 2,500 people watching me.
Yeah.
Okay, and I got the horse standing here, and the good news, he's quiet, and I go, oh, good deal. And I start working him on the line to get him warmed up, and within about 20, 30 seconds, I go, oh, goodness, he's off. So I got to stand there and entertain and
You got to wing it, you know.
well, I you know, and the neat thing is, well, it put me on my game.
Yeah.
I really had to come up to the top and make it happen. And you know, I only lost, out of about 2,500 people, I think I lost about 50 people.
We're about out of time, but I got to interject one thing. I remember one time at an expo, and a clinician, actually it was Chris Cox, he says, I need a horse that's head shy and does this and does this and does this and does this. Find me one in the barn.
Yeah.
And I said, Chris, I'll bet you there's 50 of them in the
Yeah,
barn.
no kidding.
But there's no owner that's going to admit to all
Yeah,
of that. See?
exactly.
So you just don't get